What's going on, guys? This is Waylon Martin with Bodybuilding.news bringing you another preview this time of the upcoming Olympia. To start our review, we have William Bonac. Bonac, a former 212 competitor who's moved into the Open, has gone above and beyond any expectations most had for him leading into his transition into the Open class. Not only has he done well at Open events, but he's actually won Open events. The big knock on Bonac is that he's kind of stuck at a tier below this Olympia type tier. He's able to qualify and win, in a Europa type event, although I believe he's won mostly international, smaller international events, but that tier of contest. He hasn't really made a statement for himself at like contests such as this or the Arnold Classic per se. Similar to a guy like Clarence DeVries, who we saw compete recently, he's one of these guys that's transitioned to the Open and represented himself very well. However, it's not enough to compete with these top physiques quite yet. Next on our list is Nathan DeAsha. Nathan, a not dark horse per se, but to American audiences, he certainly was relatively unknown until this year. Though deep fans of the sport, such as yours truly, were well aware of Nathan, he's really shocked some people, starting with the California Pro, where he was able to come in second place in a stacked lineup. Well, he competed at the New York Pro and didn't place as high as he would have liked, I'd imagine. He did well nonetheless and looked great. His physique is really well put together. He has a lot of pop and flow that a lot of these guys don't have. Nathan qualified for this contest by winning the overall at the Toronto Pro in a very dominating fashion at that. And heading into the Olympia, our expectations are fairly low, not because we don't think he can do well per se, but it's his first year as a professional and he's already gotten to this level. If Nathan is able to break into the top 10, that's a statement in itself. And though there are guys that have actually beaten Nathan in the past, such as Steve Kuclo, that doesn't change the fact that Nathan is going to be dangerous now and for years to come going into the future. Mamdouh Elssbiay. I probably butchered that pronunciation, but this is one of the best bodybuilders in the IFBB. This is a guy who I've actually seen in person, and the pictures don't even do him justice. He's always been a freak, and while his legs were considered a freaky body part, his lower half considered freaky in general, his upper body doesn't get enough credit either, as he's a very thinned bone type guy, if that makes sense. He has small wrists, but full muscle and a great structure. So wide clavicles, small waist, small wrist, and a ton of muscle. The guy probably wears a 4 or 5XL t-shirt, but he has a 32-inch waistline. It's a very unique combination, and he's actually impressive. He's not one of these guys that's just photogenic, but when you see him in person, he's got a stellar standout physique. If the best Ramy possible ever shows up, he's certainly going to be a threat at this contest. But if he shows up with a package we've seen before, which is good enough to win most professional shows, it's not going to be enough to top a guy like Phil Heath. It's too early to write off Ramy as a contestant or a threat at this contest in the long term. The guy still has a ton of potential. He still has some room to make improvements. And so far, it seems as if it's been continually a conditioning issue, not so much a structural issue or a muscle issue. So if he's able to bring a type of condition that we haven't seen from Ramy before, it'll be lights out. However, this is a big if. Greene is a ringer at this show. Allegedly, he's not entering the contest, but he still could last minute if he really felt like it. Could Kai beat Phil? I doubt it. I very much so doubt it. Could he easily get second place at this contest? Yes. However, I don't see him being able to beat Phil. We've seen the best Kai, and he's only getting older. Phil's getting older too, but he's still younger than Kai. And Kai doesn't really make any improvements at this point. He's just trying to catch former glory. Well, guys like Ramy would need to do something we've never seen before to get to another level. Kai is so close to being there, and I have to wonder if we're starting to see the genetic limitations of Kai versus a guy like Ramy who is just not doing the right things necessarily. This is because Kai is getting older, and he's just structurally a different type of bodybuilder than Phil Heath. Comparing Kai and comparing Phil is like comparing apples and oranges. It's two different types of physiques. It's not even necessarily about who can be their personal best at that point, because they're both going to be on. It's about what type of physique do you prefer. And unfortunately for Kai, Phil's usually going to get chosen in that category because he's a little bit taller, he has a little bit better flow to the muscle. And because of Kai's shortness or lack thereof of serious height, makes him a little bit of a troll type body. And all I mean by that is he has a torso. If Kai doesn't enter this contest though, all this prediction is for nothing. And so I'm not gonna waste too much time on him incredibly. If he does show up, he's a threat. However, it's not very likely at this point. Phil Heath. Phil, the returning champion, we don't see a lot of him throughout the year because he doesn't need to compete. And obviously it doesn't make sense for him necessarily to compete unless financially it's a huge bonus to him. And Phil's even stated this. Contests such as Arnold at this point, which he's actually never been able to win, don't even interest him anymore. So it's not in his financial interest to be running around and competing, and it allows him to focus more on contests like the Olympia. People in the past have questioned if this is the right tactic, but 5 Sandows later, the questions are gone. People like to state their doubts in Phil and say things like he left the door open last year at the Olympia, but I find this not to be true. This is Phil's contest to lose. It's up to him to make any mistakes that would set off the course to another victory or another Olympia title. Dexter Jackson, one of the most underappreciated Mr. Olympia title holders to this day, possibly the biggest threat at this contest. Dexter Jackson has looked amazing. In recent guest posing, he looks like a type of size and fullness we've never seen from him before, but still keeping his awesome shape and flow to his physique. Dexter continues to be impressive. And it's not even just impressive for his age, it's impressive in general. As the runner-up at last year's Olympia, many try to write off this placing due to the lack of Kai Greene being at the contest. However, I can tell you this placing was no mistake. And while Phil might not lose his breath or lose any sleep over guys like, say, Dallas McCarver, who's coming up the ranks, and he does recognize guys like Dallas, a guy like Dexter is a threat, a serious threat at that. Will Dexter beat Phil? Probably not. Why do I say that? Just based on the history we've seen of this contest and between Dexter and Phil. So based off of the record, we can't say that Dexter will beat Phil. However, it's very possible. Dexter continues to show up and be more and more impressive, just proving that for some guys, age is just a number to this point. Steve Kuclo. Steve is definitely not considered a serious threat at this contest. This is because even at similar contests such as last year in Europe, he got 10th in a very stacked lineup that had many Olympia contenders. So although he qualified for this show, he might just be taking up space on the stage and there for comparative sake. Steve's a great bodybuilder. Again, he's one of these guys that can win these lower tier shows anytime he likes, but he's not been competitive at an event such as the Olympia yet. Well, he looks great, he represents himself well, he's not a serious threat to these top spots. And so if he's able to break into the top 10, it's an accomplishment. Top 5 is a victory in my book. However, I don't find this very likely in such a stacked lineup. Josh, I probably butchered his name as well, but formerly known as the King of the Gym, he's had an amazing run in the IFBB so far and shocked a lot of people, rapidly jumping up the ranks, going from a guy who is just in the mix to winning professional contests. And now he's in the mix again for these top tier contests. There's not any one attribute about Josh that makes him spectacular, but everything about him is great, and this makes in total a great bodybuilder. He has mass, aesthetic, flow, and to top it all off, he's one of these real gym warriors. He says King of the Gym in his names, but it's very applicable to his life and describing himself. Look at his videos of him hitting squats and whatnot. You can't fake that type of intensity and effort. And that's one of those things that as a fan of bodybuilding, you have to enjoy. No, he's not going to challenge a guy like Phil Heath. However, a guy like Steve Kuclo, or more importantly, Kevin Levrone, are definitely shaking at the bit, nervous about this guy, and as they should be deservingly, because he has a tremendous physique that's continuing to develop, and I bet you we're going to see some improvements to his physique going into this Olympia. I don't know why, but I just get a vibe that this guy's focused for this contest, more so than some of these guys that are just happy to be there. Will he break the top 5? Likely not. Top 10? Very possible. So I'm interested to see what Josh is capable of doing here in Las Vegas. Kevin Levrone. I have made videos about this in the past, which I'll put links up to, and I just don't like his chances at this contest. I think just like him getting a qualification for this contest, he's going to get a gift of a placing as well. He could probably break the top 5. I really think, though, he won't deserve that. I'm not predicting where he's going to finish or anything like that. However, if we've seen the recent photos of him, we've seen what he's been up to lately. Yes, he has an impressive impressive body, excuse me, for his age, and very aesthetic physique still. But so do a lot of top 10 national level guys in the heavyweight division. So to say that he's going to be a threat to a guy like Phil Heath at this point, when we haven't even seen his legs, is a huge statement, and likely not true. He's obviously pretty realistic about not being a real danger to a guy like Phil Heath, but he's also not entering the contest to lose. So I can respect that as well. He's definitely got a competitor's mentality, and I wish Kevin the best, though I don't think he's going to do as well as a lot of people are hyping him up to. Victor Martinez is super impressive the last time we saw him in Baltimore, and hopefully he brings this package or even better going into the Olympia. If he's able to bring the same package even, he's a threat to be in the top 6, certainly. And he definitely can expose some of these guys with less than optimal structures on stage. Will he be a threat to a guy like Phil? No, not even with the physique that we saw him have, if Phil is as best we've seen Phil. It's important to remember it's been almost a decade since Victor arguably won the 2007 Olympia, and he's had a lot of huge burdens getting his way ever since. That doesn't mean, though, that he doesn't have a chance at this show, but let's just go off the statistics and off of history. It's not very likely. Last year, he was able to win a show as well, although he didn't look as good as he did this year, and he was able to qualify for the Olympia nonetheless, but he also wasn't a real threat at the Olympia last year. I think he's more of a threat this year going forward, but nothing is sealed yet. Dallas McCarver. Dallas is certainly an interesting mix in this competition lineup. This is because Dallas is so young and also has a ton of potential going forward, though I wouldn't say his physique is quite there yet. He's definitely sealed himself as one of these guys that can consistently win these tier 4, tier 3 type shows. And he could arguably win a New York Pro or an Arnold Classic if he chooses so. However, will he be a threat at this year's Olympia? Probably not. Actually, I will say for the top spots, definitely not. But he should break into the top 10 this year. I felt last year he had a physique that was capable of breaking in the top 10, and it didn't. I think he got a little bit overlooked, and that's expected at an Olympia lineup. But with another year under his belt, he certainly is going to be in the mix at least. As I've said earlier, a guy like Phil isn't losing sleep over a guy like Dallas McCarver. However, even Phil's aware of him, as he should be, because Dallas has this type of potential. You'll see on social media, guys are already proclaiming him to be the next Mr. Olympia and whatnot, and maybe that's true. I just don't feel it's going to be this year, and that's not a knock on Dallas. That's more praise to Phil Heath and the guys such as Shawn Rhoden that are in that spot. Cedric McMillan. Cedric, one of the most talented athletes in the IFBB, works incredibly hard, diets hard, everything like that. He just can't seem to hold it together last minute. And this is understandable with all the pressures that these guys are facing. Last year, Cedric simply didn't make it to the Olympia stage. He was qualified, he was in Las Vegas, he was planning on attending, and it just didn't happen. He fell apart in the last final minutes, and I feel like this is symbolic of a lot of these shows that Cedric enters. Part of professionalism is just showing up, and if Cedric can make it to the stage, he's going to be a threat no matter how he looks, because even an off Cedric is better than most guys. Lukas Osladil. I probably butchered his name as well. This guy is a very random entrant into the Olympia, and frankly, you can write him off already as a threat to be in the top 5. This is because he's a former 212 guy, a recent 212 guy that moved up into the open. And when he did qualify, it was a very light event, to say the least. This is because, while he was competing at the Phoenix Europa last year, there was another contest in Europe that most of the big guys at the Olympia were competing at. And so it was him in the first place slot, and Jose Raymond actually in the second place slot. Keep in mind, Jose, another 212 competitor, these guys both were 212 competitors competing in the open. There was also a 212 event at that same Europa contest. So the open category was even more watered down. This guy has a very checkered past, but a stellar physique and a type of functionality to his posing, etc., that you don't see with most of these guys. However, he, similar to Kai Greene, has some stuff on Google that isn't going to help his political battle any. In this top tier guys, a guy like William Bonac is going to out-talent him. So it'll be interesting to see where a guy like him and Bonac compare, as their physiques are more comparable. But next to a guy like Kai, Phil, anyone in that top 5, his chances get significantly lower. Ben Pakulski. He's not going to be a threat at this contest, but he's going to definitely make some guys look fat. He's going to make the guys that didn't put in the work embarrass themselves, because Ben is always on point, or so it seems. And for what he lacks structurally, genetically, etc., he more than makes up for in ethic and brain application. Ben is one of these guys that you can tell is doing everything in his power, and it gets reflected in his physique. And maybe he doesn't have the best physique due to these limitations that were mentioned earlier. It nonetheless doesn't make him any less of a bodybuilder, as he's a great athlete. It'll be an interesting battle between a guy like Ben and DeAsha, because Ben was in 4th place, I believe, in Toronto when DeAsha won, but later in the year in Vancouver was able to take home the Olympia qualification with the overall win. DeAsha, though, who was in New York and didn't place as well, and that signifies he's probably not going to be as competitive at a show like the Olympia, gives even more negative shit for a guy like Ben, who wasn't capable of beating Nathan. And that was with Ben looking, I believe, pretty similar to how he looked in Vancouver, just a different lineup. Shawn Rhoden. Shawn Rhoden is a threat, and he always will be a threat. Do I think he's going to beat Phil? I do not. But he will be in the top 6, I'm assuming, for this contest. The problem with Rhoden is that it's just not enough. There's not one thing with his physique that you can say, oh, if he fixed that, he would beat a guy like Phil. And based off of the off-season photos we saw this year from recent guest posing and whatnot, I have to be concerned with how he's looking so far. This is just because he's adding so much size to be competitive with a guy like Phil. But a guy like Phil's able to stay lean year-round, or relatively lean. And so it's going to be a little bit more of a struggle for him to bring this size off. Maybe he felt it's necessary because he needs to bring something new to the stage, but it doesn't seem like a great indication so far. With the right guidance, I'm sure he's going to look good. Actually, I'm sure he's going to look phenomenal. I just don't know if it's going to be enough to beat Phil, and I don't feel comfortable saying he will beat Phil, because we've seen Rhoden at its best, and so far it hasn't been enough. Roelly Winklaar, coming from O2 Gym off the anabolic chicken diet, with a great personality and a large amount of muscle and work ethic. It's impressive to see what Roelly's been able to accomplish with his physique, and frankly, it's going to be hard for him to break into that top 5. If he is able to do so, though, it'll be very impressive, and it is possible. We've seen him beat the returning Jay Cutler, for example. We've seen shots of him where comparatively, shot by shot, he beat some of these top guys. But everything tied together, the question will be, is Roelly going to be able to do it? Is he going to have his waist in control? Is he going to have his gut in check? Is his presentation going to be on point? Little things like this in combination with physique are the type of things that'll either gain him placings or lose him placings. The stomach issue for Roelly has been big in the past. Not so much in when he's in a controlled or fully inside a pose, but his transitions, etc. He seems to get a little bit sloppy, and it's just a bad representation of himself, because if he was able to keep his gut in control, he would just look significantly better. Dennis Wolf. Dennis is a real tragedy in some ways, but not that sad if you look at how much he's been able to accomplish so far. Dennis got neck surgery earlier in the year and obviously lost a ton of mass. He's not going to be competing at this Olympia, and though he's qualified for it, don't have any expectations so far, because based off of what the recent pictures we've seen of Dennis, he's got a lot of ground to make up for, and with his increasing age, etc., he's going to need time. He's going to need time to get it back, and it would be a rush to do this contest. So a lot of credit for Dennis Wolf for being qualified, and I believe earlier in the year he even signed a contract at one point to enter the contest, but I doubt he will be doing the show, and I doubt even more so he'd be competitive at any level if he did. So guys, that's it for today. This is just a quick preview of the Olympia. We're going to have more Olympia tests leading up to the contest, but I want to get this published and out there first and foremost. So guys, this is Waylon Martin with Bodybuilding.news, out.